Welcome to the American Society of Quality Lean Enterprise Division 2015 webinar series. By listening to our webinar series, you will get the best of the best in the lean industry. Stay tuned to the end of this recording for more details. This month, our speaker is Bob Emiliani. Bob is a professor, researcher, author, historian of progressive management, and executive trainer. He has over 30 years of experience in manufacturing and service industries and has had frontline responsibility for implementing lean principles and practices on the manufacturing shop floor, supply networks, and in higher education. Bob was the first to focus on lean leadership as an area of scholarly research and is a leading figure dedicated to helping people correctly understand and practice lean management. Now, let's join Bob as he presents Better Thinking, Better Results, a classic lean case study.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, hello, everybody. As you know, I'm Bob Emiliani, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about Wiremold's lean transformation. The picture that you see on the left is of Wiremold's West Hartford facility. It's the headquarters of Wiremold. It's still there. On the right, of course, you see an image of the book cover. This is you might see two different images out there. There was a first and a second edition, and so the second edition is the one that's currently in print. And the first edition did win a Shingo Prize, by the way, back in 2003. This is a wonderful case study of a company that did very, very well with their lean transformation, and this book, of course, gives a lot of the specifics of how that was accomplished. Many people find it useful as a handbook to guide their lean transformation efforts. If you've read it, I'm most likely you liked it very much. If not, I hope you do read it. I think you will find it to be a great resource to you. The purpose of today's talk is simply to understand why was Wiremold successful when most other organizations are not, why organizations after 10 years of effort, continue to struggle tremendously. The time frame that we looked at in the book was the start of the lean transformation in 1991 through the end of 2001, and the accomplishments are remarkable in that 10-year period, yet most of our other organizations don't have much to show for 10 years worth of effort. And then specifically identify things that you can do to help your lean transformation move forward. That, of course, is ultimately what people want to know is what specifically, what is it that I need to do to move this thing forward, to get the great results, to eliminate waste, to improve the business condition, etc. So we'll start out with a poll question here: is how do your top leaders comprehend lean? As tools for the manager's toolkit, as a management system, as a business strategy?
And Bob, we'll leave it open here for just about 20, 30 seconds.
Okay, so we'll just pause here for a moment.
Okay, it looks like 36% as tools for the manager's toolkit, 17% as a management system, 48% as a business strategy.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's good. I'm heartened to hear about the 48% who view it as a business strategy. Of course, the CEO of Wiremold, Art Byrne, will tell you that this is, lean is strategic in nature, and it sets you apart from others and should be recognized as a business strategy. And what we've all worked for years and years now is to get people to comprehend lean, minimally as a management system and better as a business strategy, and move them away from understanding this as tools for managers' toolkit. So a little background on who is Wiremold. This company was started in 1900 under private ownership by the Murphy family, and they made low voltage electrical products, things you commonly see in office buildings, wire management systems, cable and fiber optic systems, surge suppressors, and so on. And for many decades, they were a well, for 9 decades, they were a typical batch and queue manufacturing company. And they were able to survive and prosper under that method of production despite the limitations of that method of production. But then competition starts to intensify in the late 1980s with competitors from overseas and so forth, and the batch and queue practices are no longer capable of serving the customers nor their business. And so they really started to face a crisis situation. And their status in the early 90s was not good. The profits were very low. They didn't have cash to reinvest in the business. They were not growing. They were a relatively small company competing against much bigger players. Their customer service, their on-time delivery was poor and losing market share. So this is a company that's headed out of business. And of course, everyone here is familiar with the notion of the burning platform and how in many cases, when the situation is dire like this, people are finally willing to try something new. And that was the case here. Although we should also recognize that enough time has passed that we should recognize lean as a way to manage your business. You don't need a crisis to recognize the benefits of lean and to begin to manage your business that way. And hopefully we'll avoid a crisis and be proactive and say, let's start to transition over from our batch and queue way of thinking and doing things to flow. Their business results in the few years prior to when the lean transformation began were not good. I mean, things were heading downwards. Everything is indexed to the 1990 year, but previous years you can see things heading downward in terms of gross profit and net profit and so forth. So this really was a company that that was soon to be going out of business. And so one of the things that they sought to do was find a new leader. And they began that search for a new leader in the spring of 1991, and the job advertisement contained language, they're interested in candidates who understand just in time. And the reason why that entered into the job search notice was because of this NBC documentary, If Japan Can, Why Can't We, that aired, I think, in the late 80s. I think it was in the late 80s. And it talked a lot about just-in-time and so forth. So this entered into the minds of the executives that were at Wiremold prior to Art's arrival. Anyway, so the people that they did interview talked a good line about JIT, but when you probed further, you found they had no actual implementation experience with just-in-time. And of course, JIT was the way, we now refer to it as lean, but back then it was referred to as just-in-time or just-in-time manufacturing or something like that. But anyway, so Art Byrne had experience with this both at General Electric and at Danaher Corporation. And the quote from Judy Seiler, kind of captures it all. He walked in and you just had the sense he knew what to do. And he was not a magician. There's many things he had to learn along the way at GE, at Danaher, and at Wiremold. But Art had a good understanding, a good base of understanding, and a good vision for the direction that not only the company needed to go in, but what he needed to do, what he needed to learn about, and so forth. So let's just, in the beginning here, and then I'll follow it up with some of the details here. Why was Wiremold successful? Well, when you analyze what happened there, they clearly understood lean as a system of management that would replace conventional batch and queue-oriented management. So they understood that they have to replace the way they've been doing things with a new way of managing in totality, not just in operations, but in HR, in engineering, in IT, everywhere throughout the business. They understood lean as a replacement for what they had been doing previously, and also a replacement in their way of thinking as well as their way of doing things. And they also understood it as a strategy. So in the poll question, 36% see lean as tools, and they didn't fall into that trap, nor did they see it as a program or an initiative or an exercise. And the words are important, and I see in many organizations they talk about their lean initiative or their lean program, and those types of words should not be used because that undercuts the effort and the understanding that people need to have that this is something that never ends. There was also 100% top management commitment, but the important part was the participation in Kaizen, because the only way you learn lean is through doing Kaizen, and specifically Gemba Kaizen, shop floor Kaizen, shop or office floor Kaizen, or both. And so it's not sufficient to be committed. I mean, you know, anybody can just say, I'm totally committed to this or that, and it doesn't mean anything. They have to get their hands dirty. They have to get involved. Learning lean is learning completely new things. You'll see analogies to this later. So you have to participate in Kaizen. There's just no way around that. And what we see today, of course, is most leaders delegate lean to lower level people, so they never learn, they never participate in Kaizen, and therefore they never learn lean, and so they just think it's tools and so forth. Along with that is there's a completely new set of leadership beliefs, behaviors, and competencies that go with lean, and which are completely different than the belief, behaviors, and competencies that go with conventional management, batch and queue oriented conventional management. Another way of saying it is lean represents a system of management for buyers markets, competitive buyers markets, and so there's a set of beliefs, behaviors, and competencies that go with that, as distinctly different from the beliefs, behaviors, and competencies that go with a seller's market orientation associated with batch and queue processing and so forth. They also eliminated batch and queue performance measures. So the kinds of measures that were rooted in seller's market batch and queue processing were systematically eliminated from each one of the departments. So in operations, they got rid of earned hours. In finance, they got rid of standard costs. In purchasing, they got rid of purchase price variance, you know, and so on. And this is, you know, this is something that most organizations do not do. They continue to have the performance measures that are rooted in seller's market, batch and queue processing, yet they're trying to achieve responsiveness to buyer's market and create flow. And the two just don't go together. So the Wiremold story is significant because that leadership team did things that other people normally do not do. I mean, and the vast majority do not do. Most, if you know, from the top, they understand it as tools, and it stays that way for a protracted period of time. They don't participate in Kaizen. They continue to have the same leadership beliefs, behaviors, and competencies with lean that they had prior to lean, and then they continue to measure the business the same way. So the Wiremold management basically was consistent in its understanding and application of lean throughout the business, all departments, all processes, etc. And they made efforts to set people up to succeed. So just a quick example. I mean, you know, you may be familiar. I certainly am familiar with companies that tell the employees, okay, you know, create a cell and make it flow, and then hold them accountable to earned hours as the metric. And that's how you set your people up to fail. So the management set the people up to succeed. They avoided the lean tool trap, and this is something that you know, continues to dog us to this day. I call it the lean valley of doom. You're basically on a journey to achieve continuous flow. And what happens is people have gotten stuck on things like A3 reports and value stream maps, and they think of Kaizen as an event, and they just get stuck in this tool trap, and they can't get out of it. And so they develop a competency for application of tools in isolation of one another, and they do not achieve flow. And so consequently, years go by, and then somebody says, well, gosh, we've been doing this a long time, but what do we really have to show for results? And they've lost sight of where they're headed and what the strategic relevance of lean is, which is flow. So lean needs to be understood as a management system with strategic significance. There's a definition of lean. It says a non-zero-sum principle-based management system focus on creating value for end-use customers and eliminating waste, unevenness, and unreasonableness using the scientific method. And this is a definition that I came up with years ago and have used because I think it's an accurate way to define what lean management is, and there's some key principles, some key objectives, and various processes and tools. And when you understand lean in this way, it offers you there's much more you can do with it when you understand it in this way. And it has much more strategic significance to the organization, to your customers, and so on, and to the people in the company. So why was Wiremold successful? Well, the leaders were willing to learn many new things. The upper image shows a brain and a wiring diagram, and basically you have to rewire your brain. You have to get your hands dirty and participate in Kaizen and see things that you've never noticed or never saw before, and start to recognize that as waste, unevenness, and unreasonableness. The things that managers know about from 10, 20, 30 years of work experience, most of that is no longer relevant as you move forward with lean. So the image on the left shows a musician, a trumpet player, and this person may have been playing trumpet for 30 years. The analogy here is somebody's been managing or leading a business for 30 years, and now they want to move away from their seller's market, batch and queue oriented management practices to buyer's market, competitive management practice. They have to learn new things. So when you go from something like playing a trumpet, which you play by blowing into the mouthpiece and actuating the valves in the trumpet, it's a treble clef instrument, and there's things you certainly learned about music that are important, but now we're moving over to learn how to play drums, and that's completely different. And so some things that you learned in playing trumpet and learning about music there are helpful, but you're now on a completely different path, learning how to play drums, and you've got to learn many new things. And leaders that are open to that challenge and willing to learn many new things, and who can admit that the things that I have learned in the past, the things that I know, it just doesn't work that well in terms of the success of the business. We have to force a lot of things in order to make it happen, and it's just very difficult and demanding. It creates a lot of stress on people and so on. So leaders that are willing to admit those kind of things and admit that you're never done learning, that they've got new things to learn, then that was the nature of the Wiremold management team here. And I think it's telling as well that when Art came in, most people might think that, well, he just brought in a bunch of his buddies from GE and Danaher, and he did not do that. He kept the entire management team in place, except for the vice president of operations. So the existing management team, and I asked Art that, some years later. I said, Art, why did you keep everybody? He goes, well, because they were willing to learn. So there you go. Poll question number 2. Are your top leaders involved in the lean implementation? No, not much, but they support it. And yes, they're deeply involved.
Bob, while people are answering the webinar, I had a question. What do you do if leaders are not willing to change?
Well, there's some stuff you can try to do bottoms up, but ultimately the leaders usually end up reporting to some sort of board of directors, and that they're going to need to recognize the shortcomings in their leadership in terms of moving the business forward and achieving the kind of results that they want to achieve. It's a challenging question, and there's no one answer to that. The situations differ from organization to organization. But my sense is that many people who rise to leadership positions have years of positive feedback, both in school and on the job. In school in terms of good grades, and on the job in terms of promotion. And so all that positive feedback can leave you with the sense that you don't have much to learn, and that creates this sort of problem.
Have the answer to the questions. 16% no, 72% not much but they support it, and 12% they're deeply involved.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's good to hear the 12%. Unfortunately, we don't have data points for what it was like 5 or 10 years ago. The middle number, though, seems about right, that they support it. Unfortunately, that's just not nearly enough. Support is easy to say in words, but doesn't match up in practice. So this is what I mean by willing to learn new things. The current knowledge represents batch and queue sellers' market way of thinking, and most people think lean is just a bolt-on of tools and practices to the current knowledge, and it is not that. It's really a replacement of your current knowledge with new lean knowledge. So the current knowledge has to shrink over time as one gains experience in Kaizen and so forth, and the new lean knowledge grows over time, and of course that growth in new knowledge never ends. The current knowledge never shrinks in the lower picture, never goes to zero, because you always bump up against batch and queue way of thinking perhaps with your customers, with your suppliers, with investors, somebody else. You can never lose sight of how they think. You always want to change how they think. Get them to your way of thinking with your new lean knowledge, but it never goes to zero. And another thing is oftentimes bad practices based on current knowledge creep back in accidentally. So lean is really a replacement for your current batch and queue sellers market knowledge. Of course, there's the 8 wastes, but they also recognize that there's ways, the 8th waste. This comes from a paper that I wrote in 1998 called Lean Behaviors, where I described the 8th waste as behavioral waste. It's behaviors that do not add value and can be eliminated. And the Wiremold leadership team understood that you have to behave in ways that are consistent with lean. So if you're telling people to eliminate waste, but you're doing it in a way that is extremely wasteful and turns people off, then you're not going to be very successful with that. So you have to be behaviorally consistent, and Art Byrne had a sense of that, and the leadership team mirrored that kind of thinking and behavior, and so it was a management team that was, again, it was setting people up to succeed, and would reorient people problems to process problems. The management team understood from their training in Kaizen that what appeared to be a people problem was actually a process problem. So they were, through the use of PDCA and Kaizen and so forth, they were reorienting the normal way people would think, that all the problems are related to people doing a lousy job, to these are actually process problems, and anybody doing that kind of work would struggle, and that people shouldn't have to struggle. So this was a key differentiator. So how do you eliminate the 8 wastes? Well, Kaizen. Got to do Kaizen every day. And in the time that Wiremold was doing this, 1991 to 2001, before the purchase by Legrand, which we'll talk about later, they didn't create value stream maps. They didn't use A3 reports. As you will read in the book, the focus was on Kaizen. I mean, this is how you learn lean. This is how you improve processes. This is how you eliminate waste and unevenness and unreasonableness. It is by engaging in traditional industrial engineering based shop floor and office floor Kaizen. And that's how you do it. And you've got to do Kaizen every day. And it's not something you do once in a while. And what's happened in recent decade or so, or 15 years, is that people have lost sight of Kaizen and the importance in transforming an organization, to eliminate the waste, to get great results, to improve the business condition. The comments that were made at the outset of what you want to get out of this. So I want you to clearly understand that you're never going to get there if you don't do a lot of Kaizen, and you got to do Kaizen. There's right way and wrong ways of doing Kaizen. If you do it right, it makes you smarter, faster, and that's good, because then the improvements accelerate. And the reason why it's important to have the leaders of an organization participate in Kaizen is because they learn things that they would not be able to learn by any other means. So they have to get their hands dirty and participate in Kaizen. Otherwise, the brain, their knowledge and so forth remains stagnant, and of course we have to motivate our leaders to want to re-engage learning through Gemba Kaizen. So I think you should, for many of you, this might be a surprise, that there's in Wiremold had the success they did. And you got to think about also Toyota. I mean, value stream maps and A3 reports are a much more recent development. And in the history of Toyota, they didn't use that stuff until the beginning with value stream maps in the late 1980s. They were called material and information analysis, went by a different name. Nor were A3 reports used in the time frame up to sometime in the late 80s, early 90s. So you can, you can get really, really far with Kaizen, and if you do value stream maps and A3 reports in the absence of Kaizen, you're not going to get very far. So, poll question 3: do your top leaders participate in Kaizen? No, once or twice, or many times.
You still there, Bob?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I had another question while everybody's answering that. What do you, in Bob, or I should say in Art's view, what was the single hardest thing to do in the transformation of Wiremold?
Well, I think he'll probably tell you middle manager resistance. And part of that comes about because the middle managers aren't sure that the new leaders are really committed to this and so forth, and the middle managers are held accountable to certain things and whatnot, and so there's some resistance there, which you have to apply what you learn in Kaizen to understanding that, because that's simply a problem, to an abnormal condition, a problem to understand and find the root cause and identify countermeasures.
We have the poll results. 49% no, 41% once or twice, 10% many items. And just a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions, put them in the question box.
Yeah, okay, well, the answers to that poll question doesn't surprise me much. 90% basically no or once or twice. And you need to really think of this as if you are learning to play that musical instrument, play a guitar, play the drums. You have to practice every day. You have to get involved in Kaizen, and there's many different manifestations of Kaizen, but again, the traditional industrial engineering-based shop floor Kaizen is where you learn lean, and then you take what you learned there and apply that in different ways, in shorter durations of Kaizen and so forth, and to your own work. And so it's critical for leaders to participate in that, and it sends the wrong message to the organization, which is, oh, you people below me have new things to learn, but I don't. And that signals that you guys below me are the problem. Me, I don't make any kind of mistakes, and this isn't what I got to worry about, you do. So, people can sense those inconsistencies, and therefore they'll adopt the tools and the language, and they won't get great results. They'll get minimal results. So why was Wiremold successful? Well, this schematic diagram is illustrating on the left-hand axis, vertical axis, lean knowledge, percent 0 to 100. And of course, you're never done learning, so don't take it literally. You go beyond 100% over time. But what normally happens is the vice president of manufacturing, if you look at the top bar chart in red, they know more about lean than anybody else. And you're not going to be successful in an organization if you simply focus on operations and expect those processes to improve. And if you believe them to be independent of purchasing and sales and HR and quality, you're living in dream world. these things are interrelated to one another. And so in the lower diagram in blue, what happens is that Wiremold, all the senior managers participated in Kaizen, and they learned, they gained new lean knowledge over time. So, view that lower chart as being dynamic in terms of the bars, going up over time and extending past 100%, and as people continue to learn and improve. So that's the attitude that people have, is I've got new things to learn and I'm willing to learn new things. This is saying it in another way. Most organizations delegate lean to lower levels, and so the level of improvement they achieve is low and shown in red. Whereas if the leaders participate, of course they're going to learn new things, but everybody else in the organization can see that this is for real, and they'll improve much more, much faster. And so the Wiremold team, of course, participated in blue, and so that's why they were able to improve much more and faster compared to other organizations. Another reason why Wiremold was successful, because they had a simple strategy, and it evolved a little bit over time as described in the book, but be the leading supplier in the industries we serve and one of the top 10 time-based competitors globally. This is a strategy. It fit on a one-page PowerPoint slide. And the elements of that were made up of constantly strengthen our base operations, because this is the cash-generating activity in a business, is operations, and so that's very important. 100% customer service means 100% on-time delivery, 50% reduction in defects each year, 20% productivity gain each year, and recognize that the reduction in defects, it's a year-over-year, goals of 20%, 50%, and 20%. It's not setting a target of 1 DPM or 10 DPMs or something like that. It's no matter how good you are, let's get better. 20 times inventory turns, 20% profit sharing. They got very close to the 20-time inventory turns during the time span that the book was covered. They got very close a few times to the 20% pre-tax profit sharing. Visual control, and they refer to it as the 5 C's. Most everybody refers to it as the 5 S's. The 5 C's is a nomenclature used by Hitachi Corporation in Japan. And then they also had the strategy to double in size every 3 to 5 years through selective acquisitions of companies and of product lines, and to use quality function deployment to introduce new products every month. And I think one of the remarkable things was the process improvement in new product development that they achieved, so that half of their growth was organic. And that's remarkable because most companies, smaller companies struggling to compete against much larger companies will just spend a lot of money and acquire businesses as their means of growth, basically throwing up their hands and giving up on the ability of their own engineers or whomever that creates new products and services. And so they improved new product development, so they were introducing new products every month instead of every 18 to 24 months. And fully half of the growth came from new products. I mean, it's just remarkable. So why was Wiremold successful? Conventional decision making is, stay in the office, look at the computer, look at a spreadsheet, look at the numbers, and then you come to the conclusion that you make decisions that are zero-sum in nature, things that are good for the business but bad for the people, bad for the suppliers, bad for the community. And the Wiremold decision-making process was what they learned in Kaizen. Again, this is why you have to participate in Kaizen, and it has to be, good Kaizen. And by that I mean there's right and wrong ways of doing it, so it needs to be the right way. But they looked at the process and they looked at the results. I mean, the focus was on the process, and Wiremold leaders will tell you that they would emphasize more process than results, because they knew if the process was improved, not just once, but it's improved and then improved again and again and again and again and again and again, then the result is going to be better and better and better and better and better. And so what they wanted to teach people was, and themselves, is how to improve the process so they can get better and better results. And this is, again, something that most leadership teams do not do. They don't know how to look at the process because they didn't participate in Kaizen. They also gave employees what's called a qualified job guarantee, which basically said nobody's going to lose their job as a result of process improvement. And it's not a job guarantee. The people understood perfectly well that if there's a big drop in sales, that there will likely be layoffs, but nobody needs to fear Kaizen. Nobody needs to fear making improvements that might result in their specific job going away, but they're not going to lose employment with the company, that the managers will work with the employee to find a mutually agreeable next step in their career. And also management established a no-blame environment. They refuse to blame people for errors. I mean, this is the simple thing that anybody can do. You don't need any education, MBA, or anything to do that, to blame people. I mean, it takes a more enlightened leadership team to say, these aren't people problems, these are process problems. We can't keep blaming people. That's a wasteful behavior. We're telling people to eliminate waste, but yet we would be generating a lot of wasteful behaviors if we blame people. So the no-blame environment just, freed everybody up to experiment and try new things. And if you look at the history of going back in the development of Lean or the Toyota production system, rather, this is all, involving a tremendous amount of experimentation and trial and error and trying new things. And people won't try new things if they're going to get blamed for things not working out. So poll question number 4, do your top leaders behave differently post-Lean compared to pre-Lean? No, it's the same behaviors before and after, some new behaviors or many new behaviors.
Bob, while everybody's answering that question, we had a follow-up question on the last one. In your opinion, what is the single hardest thing to do in Lean in general, not specifically Wiremold, but in general?
It's probably to get the leaders to participate in Kaizen. They've had just too much positive feedback over the years through good grades, diplomas, and promotions. So they've been fooled into thinking that they know things.
It's an interesting way to say it. Never thought of it that way.
I give to my students, a visual control that says, don't think that getting good grades or earning a degree means you know anything.
Answer to the poll question, 22% no, same behaviors before and after, 72% some new behaviors, and 6% many new behaviors.
6% many, 72% some new behaviors.
And 22 same.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's heartening to see the 72% with some. The question is, are they the right some or not? Well, okay. So another element to Wiremold success was they had a code of conduct here, and the genesis of this was most companies have, a big thick HR manual that spells out a code of conduct, which of course nobody looks at. And so Art challenged the management team to come up with a code of conduct that was, simple and could fit on a card, and that everybody would be responsible towards that code of conduct. And so this was a little card that, would hang from your badge. Respect to others, tell the truth, be fair, try new ideas, ask why, keep your promises, do your share. And so there's wonderful stories of people in Wiremold that, people at the bottom of the organization coming up to Art Byrne and holding the code of conduct card and saying, hey Art, our code of conduct says be fair, and you or the management team or somebody, decided to do this, and that doesn't seem like it's fair. And people just had no problem walking up to Art and sharing these kinds of concerns with him and to contextualize it relative to the code of conduct. People were very, very comfortable with doing that, and that's a testament to to Art's conduct as a CEO and his demeanor, that He wasn't the kind of person who's locked in the office. He wasn't the kind of person wearing a $5,000 suit. He was approachable, is what I'm trying to say. And to great effect, because people would, they didn't have to go through to their supervisor, to the middle-level manager, to the general manager, to the VP, and finally to Art, for Art to know something. They just talked to him one-on-one. You'll see below is the core values, customers, people, and Kaizen. And again, emphasizing the importance of Kaizen with Q for quality there. Organizations that do not, where the leaders do not participate in Kaizen, will never make progress with this. Wiremold, in sort of my parlance that I developed many years ago, was when organizations just focus on continuous improvement. I've called that fake lean, and real lean, reflecting the two principles of continuous improvement and respect for people, where people are not just employees, but suppliers and customers and investors and communities as well. And so that management team understood the difference between fake lean and real lean. And also when it comes to respect for people, in the image above you see the banana. This is the thing that most leaders just slip up on, is they think they understand what respect for people means, and it's typically listening and teamwork and developing people. But what's really going on in the depths of the business is there's lots of batch and queue, push systems, sellers market, policies, practices, and metrics that actually disrespect people, customers, investors, suppliers, employees, and the community, and that the Wiremold management team was working on a daily basis to figure out what those policies, practices, and metrics were that were down there in the abyss, that were not easily visible, but which were disrespecting people, disrespecting all of their key stakeholders. So it's important to understand that the respect for people principle operates on many levels, and not just the surface level, which is where most people understand it. And that's what, getting an A in a course in organizational behavior, getting a degree does for you, is it just teaches you the surface level stuff. When you engage in Kaizen and go to the Genba, that's where you learn things at the deepest levels of your organization. So, like pi, continuous improvement never ends, and too much of what we see today is the phrase Kaizen event, where people periodically, once in a while, get together to improve something. That's no good. You have to make Kaizen your daily practice, and you have to do it in a way that respects people. You can't lay people off as a result of improvement, and so on. So how do you create the lean business? Well, you have to put both parts into practice. And the Wiremold managers, they had many people come by and visit their business and see the operations and see the new product development activities and so on, and see how they did purchasing, how their purchasing people were situated on the shop floor, and so on. And the management team would every now and then just say things like, well, we got all these visitors, but they're really not seeing what's going on. And that's depicted in the iceberg diagram, because what's really going on in the organization is how management interacted with the people, the respect for people principle, which was the much bigger piece of what was happening in that organization. And too much today you see, and for many years now, 2.5 decades, is a focus on continuous improvement and the tools and whatnot, and people just being overconfident in their understanding of respect for people, and therefore completely missing the point to it, and not comprehending it and putting it into practice on a daily basis. So, it's okay to go on a factory tour. You pick up a few things, but what's really going on is below the surface, and unless you know what to look for, you're never going to see it. So poll question 5, do your top leaders understand and practice the respect for people principle? No, somewhat, yes, they're getting better.
Art, while they're answering another quick question, the goals on slide 24, did Art create those, or was that like a group of people that did that?
You mean the strategy?
Yeah, there was a set of goals: reduce inventory by 20% or 20% reduction in inventory turns, that kind of stuff.
I'd have to go back and look at the book. I believe, to my recollection, I think Art sort of, provided the framework for that, and that the management team, they tweaked it. I think Art gave it the initial go, and then the management team over time worked on it. It did evolve over time. So what you're seeing is the strategy that I think is, 2 or 3 years into the business, maybe 4 years.
I think that's going to
have that same basic strategy.
I think that's also going to tie into a question we'll talk later about is what replaces traditional batch and queue measures, because it kind of looked like those measures that were on there aren't necessarily batch and queue, but maybe more emphasized on lean inventory turns as an example.
Yeah, flow.
Yeah. Right. Answer to the poll question, 9% no, 54% somewhat, 36% yes, and they are getting better.
Okay. Well, that's a little bit encouraging. I think a lot of these numbers could be far more encouraging if the leaders participated in Kaizen. I think you'd see dramatic improvement in a short period of time. But again, it needs to be a good Kaizen. So Wiremold results were really eye-popping. Over the period of years that are shown in this chart, sales increased 4 times. Don't forget that growth, half of it was organic, with new products, being developed every month. Profit improves, the gross and net profit. You see their acquisitions of companies or product lines listed there. The inventory turnover, the working capital turnover. The business increased tremendously in terms of shareholder value and enterprise value. There was great results, not just from a financial perspective, but from a non-financial perspective as well. So customers were much happier with Wiremold's quality, delivery performance, and so on. They actually got pricing power in the marketplace because of some of the things they did in sales and marketing that were remarkable. The employees, they have nothing but great love for Art and great love for those days. It was the best work experience that these people ever had. It was a remarkable thing. So while this focuses on the financial results, the book talks a lot about the non-financial results as well. And by the way, when this book was written, one of the pushback we always got was from chief financial officers, and they said, well, you need to prove to me that this will result in better financial performance, because I'm not going to do it unless I see that. And so we had a chapter devoted to financial results in the book to specifically answer that CFO reaction. But what was interesting too is once we answered the question, you show that to the CFOs. I mean, those are big numbers in a 9-year period. Then they would sit there and say, well, I don't know if I want to do that. So it's pretty clear that they just didn't want to learn anything new. All right. So going back to the key learnings? The management team understood Lean as a management system and strategy, participation in Kaizen, learned and applied the new leadership beliefs, behaviors, and competencies. And it was a great management team in terms of their interaction with one another and how they supported one another and gave feedback to one another, and so on. Judy Seiler, the former HR vice president, was amazed. She was like, for so many years I always had to, watch my back, like I'm going to get stabbed by somebody, some other manager or whatever. And that just all evaporated. Eliminating these batch and queue performance measures and so on. So they set people up to succeed. They were successful. The employees could go about their daily business of trying new things. They had freedom to try new things, freedom to fail. And as a result, they were able to improve processes at a remarkable pace. So this is one way of looking at it. You know, if a lot of leaders think that their knowledge of conventional management is equivalent to knowledge of lean management. Again, they think lean is just something you bolt on to existing knowledge, and that's really all there is to it. And basically, they're going to fail. It's going to happen. They're not going to be successful. But on the other hand, you have leaders who say, you know, the more knowledge I have of conventional management, that's probably a liability in terms of understanding lean management. So there's actually an inverse relationship there. The more you know about conventional management, the less you know about lean management. And so if you're willing to learn, you're going to succeed, but if you're unwilling to learn, you're not. So what happened to Wiremold? Well, Wiremold was acquired by a company called Legrand, and schematically it's shown in this diagram here. So it is a schematic, so just take it for that. But under the Murphy family, it's batch and queue processing through, you know, September of 1991. Then Art Byrne and the management team come in, and that's the blue line. Legrand buys Wiremold, then KKR and Vendel Investment buys Legrand. And, you know, new management team comes in. The book describes why this transaction occurred. It's not a short story to explain here on a webinar, but anyway, so this transaction occurred. Oh, I left out the middle part that Schneider buys Legrand, etc. And so while Legrand and Schneider are involved in whatever, you know, Wiremold continues to do its thing. But then new management comes in, and you know, the managers, they're not bad. The new managers, they're not bad people. You know, on the purple line on the right-hand side, the descent into fake lean. They just have, you know, a different education, a different background. They see things differently, and so when it comes to lean, you know, they went in kind of a high-speed reverse. And so these kinds of things happen. And let me explain it to you this way. You know, if you were to purchase a home that's dilapidated, and then you fix it up, so that's number 2 here. You made addition, whatever, you fixed up your home, and you're very proud of everything you did, and you're very selective of the owner the potential owner that's going to buy your house, because you want somebody to care for your house and make it even better. And you settle on an owner who's going to, you know, looks like they're going to go do that. And then you do the transaction, you sign all the paperwork. There, you now have a new owner, and you move away to Florida or wherever you go. And then you come back some years later and you find out, well, the house is different. It's not quite in the same condition as you left it. And, you know, the owners did different things to it, and they had a different vision for that than you did, and so forth. So, you know, that's reality. That stuff happens. And so in the second edition of the book, where we, you know, bring the story up to date between the first edition 2003 and the second edition in 2007, there are challenges posed to the reader. And the challenges are, for example, and the 2 of them are listed here, all businesses will undergo changes in leadership and changes in managers. What is your plan to assure new leaders and new managers will build upon past lean efforts versus undo the lean efforts? Is your plan simple? Is your plan practical? Because it is with certainty, 100%, that there will be changes in leaders, top leadership, and managers, you know, throughout the levels. And it's, of course, the top leadership changes is where the greatest risk is when it comes to going backwards with lean. So what is the plan here? And you know this with certainty, this is going to happen. So you better have a plan. And, of course, it needs to be something that's practical. Now, most businesses will undergo changes in ownership. Not all, but most. So in the prior slide, that's 100% certainty that there's going to be changes in leadership and manager. This one, it's less than 100%. Most businesses will undergo changes in ownership. What is your plan to assure that the new owners will build upon past lean efforts versus go, backslide? Is your plan simple? Is your plan practical? So these are some of the important lessons learned from the Wiremold story. It's not just, how do you transform your business from batch and queue to lean, but how do you continue in that direction through changes in ownership and changes in leaders? And Wiremold had a very good plan and for number one here, but number two might, in hindsight, might have been a better plan for that one. So with that, I'll take your questions.
So just for everyone's information, we're near the time that we would normally end the webinar. We have a few questions, and so we'll go ahead and continue to ask the questions. If you need to drop off, go back to the YouTube video later, and you can hear the questions there. First question was, what would be the performance measures that would replace traditional batch and queue? This is back earlier when you were talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you participate in Kaizen, your target progress report shows you what your measures are. They're time and quantity based. And since you're trying to achieve flow, it's a derivative function of time and quantity. And there's a section in the book on metrics that's explicitly shows you those specific metrics. But they're basically time and quantity based.
Can you give an example of specific level 4 respect for people? Something specific. What kind of things would that be?
Well, one of the things you learn in Kaizen is how to observe a process, and through observation you start to learn how people struggle. You start to see things that you never thought before constituted somebody struggling with something or other. So, if you have a metric in place, for example, that causes people to do the wrong things, that's a form of struggling. So respect for people would say, we have to change the metric. Or there could be some sort of physical activity that somebody on a shop floor is doing that sort of looks normal, ergonomically doesn't look too bad, but once you really start to observe it, you say, this is too much struggle for this person. So you have to understand things in a finer level of detail than we currently comprehend it, and how you learn that is through Kaizen. So think of the analogy of, these days when a punter kicks a football, these kicks are going, 55, 60 yards. And 20 years ago, a punter would kick the ball, it'd go 40, 45 yards. So what happened? What happened is, you get the video camera out and you really observe what's going on and understand the mechanics and so forth. And that's how you eliminate, the struggles that people have in doing their work. You have to understand things in the detail. Again, that means admitting, I don't understand things and I have a lot of new things to learn.
A specific question, we have someone that's at a company where they, through cost cutting, kind of the traditional, I suppose, batch and queue concept, there's not really enough people left to get the work done. How do you begin to start a lean journey when you're in that situation?
You just do Kaizen. You can't afford not to. What people will often say is, well, we can't do Kaizen because that'll shut down production for the week or two. No, it won't. It might, production might be shut down for half a day or a day when equipment's moved around, but once you move it around, your productivity's up 500, 600, 700%. So you're caught up 3 days later. You just have to go do it.
How do you convince leadership to be involved in lean?
Yeah, well, that is always the big challenge. Again, I don't have any. There's no silver bullet. There's no one answer to that question. you've got to just try different things to try to engage the leaders.
How do you ensure that lean is not a task, one-time thing?
How do you ensure lean is not a task? This is part of the difference between good Kaizen and bad Kaizen. You know, good Kaizen teaches people that, you know, you make an improvement, and if people are having fun, if they're engaged in Kaizen in a way that's fun, while they're making these improvements, they'll recognize it to be a fun and rewarding activity, which will lead them to think of other improvements. So rather than making improvements once in a while, if you make Kaizen fun, where people do lots of what's called tri-storming, you know, experimentation, hands-on trial and error, doing rapid experimentation, then this starts to instill with them a sense that we can make many improvements, you know, frequently rather than few improvements sparingly. And so I don't think people have a good appreciation of how much fun this can be, and also how much progress can be made by making improvements from one day to the next. When we were doing, you know, the Wiremold book, and so I'd go in and visit the management, and we'd go walk the shop floor and so forth. You know, things that I would see there on a Monday were gone by Wednesday. You know, just there'd been major changes in the Hijunka box, or you know, in where supermarkets were situated, or what have you, in the organization or in the office. So this was very dynamic, and because people tend to think of Kaizen event, and they somehow think of continuous improvement as once in a while. You know, you just don't have the pace of improvement that you need.
While you were talking, that was actually another question that came in. Is Kaizen daily or is it event-based?
Daily. Think of it as learning how to play guitar or piano every day. Every day, every day, every day. Think about if you were on a sports team, especially now. So the university I'm at, you know, we have a football team, right? Those football players don't just show up in July and to start practice and lift weights, you know, and then play the season and then eat everything in sight and get big and fat and out of shape. It's a year-round activity. You know, fitness, conditioning, football practice, scrimmaging, every day.
How do you prevent leaders from dominating Kaizen events and Kaizen activities?
The rules that are established, that should be established, is they're a team member. The role that they play as an officer of the company or the head of a department do not apply.
Is there an inventory turn target for lean?
No, there is not. You know, I've seen inventory turns as high as, you know, 200. If you want to set a target, 365, turning your inventory every day. That's a good target.
There you go. You were talking about the question that was in the back of the book about what would you do to plan for new management coming into a company. Can you give us a specific example of what that would look like in your opinion?
Say that again. What would a plan for what?
The slide that you actually have up right now. I guess actually it was lesson learned number 1.
Yeah.
Can you give us a specific example of what a simple plan would be?
I offer some suggestions, and I don't have the book in front of me. I haven't read this in many years, but there's some suggestions in there. But basically, you need, you know, your situation is probably different from other people, and so there needs to be some sort of deliberation on what would you do to ensure that the efforts move forward. So there's got to be some kind of training, some kind of development. There's got to be something that precedes it in who you select for these jobs, who you hire. That relates to how you promote from within as well, and what your practices are with respect to developing talent internally, and so on.
Question about justifying transformation. I think we talked a little bit about not being as focused on financials. If we're not focused on financials, how do you justify an investment?
Well, I mean, the financials are part of this. You know, it's not separate from it. And what typically happens with batch and queue way of thinking is that there are trade-offs. And you say, well, in order to have a higher on-time delivery, I need more inventory. I mean, that's how you think in batch and queue. That's not how you think with flow. And so, so in Lean world, you're eliminating all these trade-offs. You don't look at a target progress report in Kaizen and say, we've improved throughput, but now how bad is quality? We improve all these things simultaneously, through mistake proofing and visual controls and whatnot. So it's not a question of the finances are better and everything else is worse. That would be the true case for fake Lean, but not with real Lean. Things improve simultaneously.
Okay, it looks like we're coming kind of to the last one here. Question is, thoughts on best manner to document Kaizen efforts? Simple.
I mean, the forms that are used in Kaizen are one-page forms. The 5S form, Yamazumi charts, and so on. That's what you should be using, and post that up on rolling cork boards or visual controls on the wall. There's no need to do more than that. Standard work chart, standard work combination sheet. Just Kaizen teaches you how to document that.
Okay. I had one. Let me see. I have one back here. There was a specific slide. Let's see if I can find it here. Specific slide. Someone wanted to. It was the leadership, the lean strategy in business slide.
Yeah.
Just wanted to see that slide again, and maybe you could go do a quick explanation.
What number was that?
I'm not sure. It just said the one that demonstrated lean strategy in business. So I think it might have been. That one right there. Go back. One more right there, like that. Well, no, maybe not. Well, honestly, I guess I'm not sure which one it was. So, that's probably it. Just a shout out to that person that had that specific question. If you need to see any of this, it'll be up on YouTube. You can go back and check the specifics then to look and talk about what you needed to see. So, Bob, we're at the end here. Do you have any final comments that you would like to say?
Kaizen.
That's it.
Have a good day.
I am Paul Harbath, the 2015 Chair of the American Society of Quality Lean Enterprise Division webinar series. I want to thank Bob for his presentation and thank you for listening to Bob Emiliani's Better Thinking, Better Results, a Classic Lean Case Study. If you have any questions about the content of this webinar, feel free to contact Bob directly. Next month, our presenters will be Anna Bailey and Derek Browning. Building a plan for every part, PFEP, is one of the most effective ways to create standardization in an ordering and delivery process and optimize material flow. Breakthrough results in on-time delivery, coverage, and cost reduction can be achieved through this discipline, but how do you do it? In this 1-hour webinar, Lean Core Consulting will present the critical components of PFEP, that will ensure delivery of the right part at the right time in the right quantity. Anna Bailey is the Director of Training and Education for Lean Core Supply Chain Group. As a leader for the launch of the Lean Fulfillment Center in Kentucky, Anna was responsible for process and people development, as well as inventory accuracy for the leveled, small lot size, and frequent pull replenishment of material to the customer. Anna is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt. Derek Browning is a Regional Vice President for Lean Core Supply Chain Group. Derek has 9 years of supply chain and logistics experience, including transactional transportation management and the deployment of lean principles and practices in several cross-functional areas. Derek holds several certifications, including Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, Lean Strategic Sourcing, and Lean Six Sigma Logistics Supply Chain Management. The American Society of Quality Lean Enterprise Division webinar series is the place for you to hear the best of the best in the lean industry and learn more about how to apply lean in your application. The American Society of Quality Lean Enterprise Division is a global network of professionals helping individuals and organizations apply proven and leading-edge lean principles and practices to achieve dramatic results for your personal and organizational success. Come lean with us.